Nowadays, we know that many of these character defects are habitual patterns that served the survival of your parents. But of course, they were modeling these character defects to you. What are your
Mhm.
character defects? Which ones have you taken on?
Oh, definitely anger. Um, I worked with a trauma therapist for more than a few years, and we kind of identified when my rage, wrath, and anger was born.
Yeah.
And and definitely pride and ego. I mean, you can't be a drug addict, alcoholic like I am without a grandiose ego and pride off the charts.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today I've got Paul Davis with me. Paul and I are fellow travelers on a road with a lot of wet patches in their lives. Paul and I have been escape masters. We try to escape our reality with alcohol, with behaviors that we are probably not so happy and proud of. But we are here today because we both agree that A, we have got both a very sexy aerodynamic haircut and that we clearly
That's
needed
right.
to link up here, but also that we need to talk about the still persevering bullshit out there. Men don't cry. Boys, come on, you need to be strong. The kind of typical XY chromosome behavior, which is often putting so many obstacles into our way. I think we need to have more meaningful conversations when it comes to men and their feelings, so that these feelings and the subconscious core beliefs don't continue to sabotage who we could become if we just put our ego and the bullshit aside. So, Paul, welcome to
Mm.
my show. You would think in 2025, men have grown up, so to speak, and that there is less of a macho attitude out there. Having said that, these things are, of course, laid down often in our youths at a very early, vulnerable time, age 2 to 7, thereabouts. And when I look back at that time, well,
Absolutely.
men were hard men, or at least tried to portray themselves as such, and were drinking heavily. It was normal. Alcohol in Germany in the 70s were ubiquitous. It was everywhere. Was your upbringing similar?
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, my dad didn't go anywhere without road beers, right? We had a garage refrigerator full of beer, and I was the little uh, go get me a beer, boy. Go get me a beer.
Exactly. The question then, of course, is for some people that was just their way of life. For others, for many more, I would say, it was their way of coping with trauma. It was their way of coping with their childhood, their experiences. Was it a happy home in which you grew up?
Absolutely not. It was a home of chaos and violence and neglect and abandonment. Um, Mom was a drug addict, popping pills and drinking wine, and dad was an physically abusive alcoholic.
You're not mincing your words, Paul. I give you that. Um, and I think that is good. It's good that you have come to terms with that, that you have realized how much that was actually setting the scene kind of series of events there. My God. What was your story with alcohol? When was the first time that you drank?
Oh my gosh, the first time I drank, oof, probably single digits, 10 or younger. Because when I would run for the beers, I'm going to crack it and I'm going to have a swig before I take it to dad. Um, and back to your point, Jeff, where you said that for me to have identified the home I grew up in and all the abuse and neglect and abandonment, I love my parents. They both passed on now.
Mm.
They did the best they could with the tools that they had
Yeah.
at the time, and there was no my siblings and myself included, there was no forgiveness needed, um, because we loved our parents. And it's part of that. I think you and I talked about it, the betrayal trauma bonding. A child is going to bond with a parent regardless of the abuse or the neglect or the abandonment. Um, and we did, and we loved our parents, and we just we all came to terms with they did the best they could at the time. We all survived, all four of us.
That's hard to say. Was there never a feeling of, you said it, betrayal? Of typically, I mean, when you reach teenager years and you become more autonomous and want to spread your wings, is it not a normal kind of succession, a kind of evolution to become rebellious and tell your parents, I hate you, especially under these circumstances?
Yeah, and it's funny because my brother's genius level IQ, and he's the introvert and the musician. My older sister is the take charge, kind of natural born teacher and leader. And my younger sister was the baby girl. I doubt she ever got a spanking. And then there's me. And I was born a fighter and a scrapper. And I never took shit. And perhaps that's why I suffered the most at my parents' hands, because I talked back. I stood up for myself. I stood up for my siblings. And so I suffered the wrath of their character defects.
Nowadays, we know that many of these character defects are habitual patterns that served the survival of your parents. But of course, they were modeling these character defects to you. What are your character defects? Which ones have you taken on?
Oh, definitely anger. Um, I worked with a trauma therapist for more than a few years, and we kind of identified when my rage, wrath, and anger was born.
Yeah,
And so and definitely pride and ego. I mean, you can't be a drug addict, alcoholic like I am without a grandiose ego and pride off the charts.
that's a fair call. Um, what did the alcohol give you?
Took away all my fear. Made me 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Um, and I was very much the Lone Ranger. Uh, Took care of myself for and didn't need anyone or anything.
No, that sounds rather familiar to me, I have to say. And that, of course, has helped us. And after all, we were in a situation where, at least in our mind, we were the Lone Rangers. We were
Mhm.
alone. There was no one there to help you. You had to survive on your own. That was exactly one of the key lessons I learned the hard way. And really, at that point in time, even now, with all the hard emotional intelligence work I've done, I very much understand that young man who had developed that core belief, and I don't think he was far off. Sometimes core beliefs are a heap of bullshit, I have to say, and guilty as charged here as well. But some core beliefs are actually very uncomfortably close to the truth, and in my setting, and the way it sounds in your setting, this is one of them. Now, many of us in turn, because we become these lone wolves, we also become go-getters. We also take chances, not just when it comes to alcohol and maybe the wrong sexual partners, but we also take chances when it comes to development. So many of us do become actually successful. Um, did that translate to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I got out of the Navy, and in the Navy they taught me my trade. I was in the engine room. I was an engineer in the engine room. I got out and worked at odd jobs for a year, and then got in at a power plant. And I ended up becoming the youngest supervisor at that plant ever.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is, we learn to focus on something, and then because there seems to be few other options, we focus on that and get it done. And especially in the United States, but also in the UK, in Germany, this kind of attitude is very much encouraged and supported by society. We are the self-made men, we
Mhm.
are the go-getters. And that is, of course, something where we say, yeah. And on the flip side, it lets us get away with certain things that, of course, can be rather detrimental. The drinking, for example. Was the drinking getting you into trouble? Because here, on the one hand, you were actually being this man who was kicking ass, the youngest supervisor in the power plant. Yet, I know that there is an alter ego there that was rather playing hard as well, not just working hard. How did that go?
Ab- Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that was my motto for decades is I work hard, so I'm going to play hard, and I can afford it, God damn it, so I'm going to.
Exactly.
Um, and I did for decades. Um, so it was just one shift, leaving the power plant, going to the bar, leaving the bar to go score some dope, and then staying up and saving enough dope in the morning to get me going and going back to work.
The eye opener. It's interesting that you used dope as an eye opener. You would rather think, interesting. It rather slows you down. But I guess it was slowing down the anxiety just to that level that you could focus and could get out there. Is that fair to paraphrase?
Yeah, and it's funny because it took me a long time to figure out that a lot of people don't pour bourbon in their morning coffee.
No shit, Sherlock.
And right, and a lot of people don't say, we would joke and we would call it, we would save the breakfast bump. We would save one line to do with that bourbon laced coffee every morning to get going again. Let's go, bring it on. It's time to go back to work.
Oh dear. So what made the change? I mean, you seem to have had it all in control. Yeah, and then we laughed. But at least in your mind, you pretended that things were all in control. What was
Mm.
the incident, or what were the incidents which finally,
Well, sure. Along with the drinking and drugging, I was a bar room, street, back alley, parking lot fist fighter. Um, and I had what I wore as a badge of honor. I had this red rage that when my anger got to a
oh
point,
dear.
I would literally see red and it would drop down. And at the bottom, when it got to the bottom, I would, like the berserkers of long ago, I would black out until the fight was over. Um, and then, Stefan, I fell in love and I met the love of my life, and her love killed the red rage. It tempered my anger for about 11 years. And thank God her love eliminated the red rage. I've never got that angry again. Um, but I have lost my temper, but not like I used to. So love really changed me profoundly.
Oh, it sounds like such a cliche. But I would actually like to rephrase that. You were finally, the vulnerable you was finally shown the love that you did not receive in the way you needed to at a younger age. And this can be incredibly disarming. And it is the most beautiful feeling. It is the power of love, the power of dopamine, the power of peace and serenity. That all is linked together when someone gives you that huge hug that's really coming from their heart and telling you, don't worry, it's going to be all right. They don't need to say a word, just the way they look at you, the way they touch you, whatever your love language is. The moment they
Mhm.
can talk in your love language and say it's going to be all right, this is one of the most
Mhm.
beautiful feelings. And it's one of the worst things if that need is not being met, because so many people end up trying to stick with those things that they know, which is the chaos. And that's where then you have got an unstable home in which they grew up, and that continues into dysfunctional relationship and ongoing unstable homes. Everything happening on a subconscious level. You attract some really not the right partners, and the whole story just continues with their needs still not being met. And we still become
Right.
escape artists. Mm.
Correct. 100%. That's the story of my life. After the my wife, uh, we I fell in love, um, and she died in my arms 10 years later. Uh, and then I got into exactly what you're talking about. I got into the abusive relationships with women, and not being abused by women, but not loving correctly, but still looking for that love that I had with
Mm.
Doris, with my wife. Um, and chasing that and looking for that kind of one in a lifetime love again. Um, and so attracting the love avoidance when I was the love addict, when I'm looking for love, every woman that I picked was the love avoidant, where
Oh,
uh,
no.
those those cycles, and I repeated it and repeated it and repeated it until I had to hit my bottom with the love addiction, just like I did with my cocaine and my booze.
Talk about insight, brother. Talk about insight. Okay, that is not something that you pick up in a quick YouTube tutorial. This is something that you have to work on a hell of a long time because there is so much trauma in your life, and that trauma came in layers. And so the healing needs to come in layers too. My goodness. It's interesting when Doris died, you did not go back to the alcohol, the way I understand it. Is that correct? And
100% correct. And it's so funny how, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 no. Keep going. You keep going.
Okay. Okay. So it's so funny how God came into my life and worked for me to get sober. Um, because just the snippet of my bottom was the transformation from my father to me became complete January 28th, 2001, which was my last drunk, which was Super Bowl Sunday. And that night, I put my hands on my wife in a way that a man shouldn't, a way that I saw my father treat my mother. That got me into recovery. And 3 months into recovery, Doris is diagnosed with cancer. So I had to stay sober because I had to take care of her. And I hated everything about the 12-step program I was in. And I hated everything about having to stay sober. Now that my wife I hated it all. And yet, you're absolutely right, Stefan. I stayed sober again with love. Love for my wife and the love of my fellow 12 steppers, where they surrounded me with an unconditional love that I had never seen before, never experienced. And I was very much carried through those. My first 3 years of sobriety were a shit show. A lot of times there's the cliches and the sayings in the 12-step programs of keep coming back. It's getting better. Keep coming back, Polly. My family and closest friends call me Polly. Keep coming back, Polly. It gets better. Keep coming back. Well, 3 months in, my wife's diagnosed with cancer. And then the next 2.5 years, she's dying. And then her death. And I'm telling my friends, this shit sucks. This is not getting better. Sobriety sucks. So they changed that saying and they said, keep coming back, Polly. We love you.
Ha 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 ha
And I,
ha ha. Beautiful.
Mhm. And I
Oh,
chose to believe.
wow. It's interesting how you said that. Sobriety sucks. That's actually not true. Life sucks. Life is
Mm-hmm.
kicking you in the balls repeatedly. And you just
Mm-hmm.
finally think that you got shit sorted, and then it comes up with a new idea how to kick you in the balls. And that is a fact. We cannot change that. And certainly, if I was to reflect back at 2024, at 2023, I do not know a single person who hasn't gone through tremendous challenges, faced huge obstacles, and where their lives irreversibly changed for one reason or the other. And the same holds true for me. So the trauma continues, and often to a level that we did not even imagine beforehand. You think you know trauma, and then something happens where you think, okay, why the hell did I question life? Now I really know what misery is.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though that some of us choose to fall back into habits that are not helping us. And it's quite easy because after all, your habit, the drugs, the alcohol that served you well in a absurd sort of way for decades, it took the pain away. Did you
Mm-hmm.
ever, in the last 23, 24 years, ever have a relapse?
By the grace of God, I have not.
Hmm. I had, including sort of not last year, the year before on Christmas, when my divorce or my separation sort of started. I thought, fuck it, and I went on a sort of 2 week string of a bender, and it was, with hindsight, I was grateful for it because I needed to learn again
Mm-hmm.
lessons. I needed to go back to where I was, the old me, to just check certain things out. And then it became clear to me, no, that is definitely no longer you. And that was it. And I was finishing off. But I think a relapse in its own right is not a failure. It is that you have to learn certain lessons either again or anew, or that there are new lessons to be learned. In this particular case, I had just lost my wife of 30 years due to divorce. And I was very insecure, no self-worth. And when I was drunk, I went back to when I was 21, to that
Mhm.
younger version, the strength, the optimism, the joy, the way that I was dancing when I was 21, the way I was able to fight when I was 21. It's interesting because whilst I was drunk, I actually wrote things down, who I want to be,
Mhm.
who I need to be, etc. And then the next morning,
Mhm.
I was able to look at that. So I'm so pleased for you that you didn't have a relapse. For those people out there who have had new trauma and maybe fell back, I want to congratulate you. Hopefully, you have learned the lesson. And because there was a lesson that the universe or God has given you with that relapse, it showed you that you probably did not look after your needs. That you didn't look after what you truly needed, both from a physical point of view as a human being, as well as from an emotional and spiritual point of view. Do you think that is fair to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm,
Regardless, regardless of the shit storm that comes our way, there's always the silver lining. There's
mm,
always, just like you said, the lesson to be learned.
mm.
Um, and I feel that our job, if and when, not if, but when we get kicked in the teeth, is to spit out our teeth and keep going and just walk.
Oh dear. Makes me cringe because I was in a gang assault and my front teeth are knocked out. So I know how it feels when your prosthesis fails or when etc. I've spit my teeth out literally. So
Join the club. Join the club. Me too. Mine are fake. The guy beat the shit out of me and my buddy.
Oh, right. Okay. Picking the wrong target. And again, there was a lesson waiting for you to learn. Oh my
Right,
dear.
right.
But then again, it is that these are all the lessons that are so paramount to our growth. Because if we let it, then this can be a huge driver in all the right directions and with the energy that we need at that moment in time. It has driven you
Mhm.
to become the lone wolf survivor, your trauma. Now, the trauma can drive you towards seeking new ways of living, a new lifestyle. And for some of us, we start in AA, and in fairness, I was there too. Um, but
Mhm.
I found that the 12-step program of AA was superb, absolutely superb for the start of my recovery, so to speak. Later
Mhm.
on, however, I felt that it was rather limiting because here we were using alcohol, we were using drugs, behaviors, whatever it was, to escape our reality. And here we are initially identifying ourselves. I am an alcoholic. I am an addict. Are you really?
Mhm.
Or are you just a broken being who has tried his
Mhm.
best with alcohol and with drugs to actually sort yourself out? Because when I look at affirmations and when I look at I am, the I am is
Mhm.
something that goes into the subconscious. I am
Mhm.
worthy because I'm worthy. I am lovable. I am not a failure. I never say that. I am a man who is surviving challenges. I am open to God and the universe to guide me towards a better life. That's who I am. I am not the alcoholic anymore. So how do we bring those things together? On the one hand, the very important first step of recovery, and then the affirmations that are maybe holding us back. I am an alcoholic. I'm a failure. I'm a piece of shit. No, you're not.
Right, right. That 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 made me laugh so much because the I am statements are incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. Um, my girls, I have three younger daughters, and they'll say, "I'm so stupid." No, you're not. No, you're not, and never say that again. Um,
Exactly.
and so I went through a divorce as well, which was devastating to me. Um, And that's when I got into all the neurosciences and I started learning all the neurologies and the epigenetics and the neuroplasticity and all of that. And yet I'm still in recovery. I'm still very active in a 12-step program.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that after 7 years, you have brand new skin. All your skin cells regenerate. So, so the good thing is my ex-wife has never touched me in an intimate way because she hasn't touched this body. And then I'm learning as well that from head to
Well, I like
toe,
that. I like that.
yeah,
Okay.
from head to toe, all our cells regenerate every 11 years.
Uh,
So I'm learning this and I'm sober. And to your point, Stefan, that I'm more than 11 years sober. There's not an alcoholic or a drug addict cell in my body anymore. Am I an alcoholic? Am I a drug addict? I say I am 3 to 4 days a week when I'm at meetings. I have Paul Davis alcoholic, you know. Um, so that's one of those razor's edge that we walk in recovery.
yeah.
If you choose to learn about all the neurosciences and how our brains really work,
Yeah.
but you're 100% right. I am a child of God. I am a strong man. I am incredibly successful. Um, but the I am statements, man, I mean,
Uh,
I get it. I get
yes.
it. Dude.
That is both school of thoughts are right, but I wanted to address that because it is such a controversy or such a obvious hang on. You can't have two truths of complete opposite beliefs. I am a failure and a drug addict. I am worthy of love, etc. So nowadays, because I actually do a lot of affirmations for myself to actually just ground myself, I'm well and truly over there in this camp. Having said
Mhm.
that, in the 12 step system, I think it is such a powerful thing because 95% of the disease of alcohol use disorder or alcoholism is 95% is denial. So
Mhm.
therefore, there needs to be the first step. Okay, I am
Mhm.
not in control. I am in trouble. But
Mhm.
there is a greater power out there and that there is hope out there. So step one, two, three, they are so powerful when you're in the early stages of recovery and when you are the first time exploring non-addiction ways to deal with your pain.
Mhm.
I am pretty much now, what, 10, 11 years of sobriety. Last year, my wife and I went onto a cruise, and in order to sort of rekindle our marriage, see if there's still something there. And on that cruise ship, there was a meeting of the Friends of Bill. And
Mhm.
the first cruise ever, I didn't know. I thought, oh, this Bill is a really quite of has a lot of friends because they are there every morning at 10 o'clock or so in that bar. Um, so now I knew what it was, and we actually went there. And the first meeting was weird. It was just two, three other people turned up, and we just chatted. And then the second
Yeah.
meeting, I went there, and this time there were seven, eight people there. And I had already the plan to challenge them and challenge in a good way
Mhm.
because I thought, wow, here we've got eight people who have got combined decades and centuries of sobriety. We must have learned so much. So I said to them, come on, guys,
Mhm.
we'll change the format of the meeting. Instead of the normal kind of things that we do, why don't we all have 5 minutes to teach each other a new skill? A new skill in recovery, a new skill in whatsoever. Each of us 5 minutes. What do you think? very little enthusiasm. And I thought, okay. Um, and
Mm,
so I said, come on, tell us here. This dude had something like 40 years. And
mm,
what do you do? What do you do to sustain yourself, etc.? Well, I pray and I go to meetings.
mm,
Boof. His wife next to him, again, about 30 years sobriety. Well, I pray and I go to meetings. And that
mm,
is the same thing, the same experience I had when I went to meetings. There was very little that they could offer. The meeting was
mm,
there, and you've got the dude who's there 30 years and is so grateful and tells his story from 25 years ago. And if I would not be here this morning, I would be in the bar. Well, where is the
mm,
self-help? Where's this improvement? Where are the skills, the emotional intelligence work? Where are those kind of things that you have learned? But I dare to say that much of that can be part of some 12 steps, but I feel that often enough it is not.
mhm,
So once you're sober, do the 12 steps still have a role to play? I'm devil's advocate here.
mhm. I would say I'm picking up what you're putting down. Um, there is huge benefit to the newcomers with working the steps, um, because it is life changing. If they choose, they're going to go from a life of addiction to a life of recovery. Um, as far as the benefit that I still gain of going to meetings regularly is helping that newcomer
Exactly.
and walking with them to the life of sobriety. Now, as far as how can you take the 12 steps and apply them, I can very definitely say I've applied the 12 steps to cancer, and I've very
Mm,
definitely applied the 12 to death and dying, the process of
mm,
dying and death.
mm,
I've definitely applied the 12 steps to grief, and
mm,
probably not systematically working them,
mm,
but applying the principles behind them
mm,
to
mm,
say the betrayal of my ex-wife when she decided that she wanted to date another man
mm,
and throw me and my daughters away, just throw our life away and go off on our own. So the underlying principles, the
mm,
honesty, the brotherhood, the service, um,
mm,
I think they can apply across the board. I think this world would be a much better place if, and maybe not the official 12 steps, but applying the principles
mm. And you have to say
and kind of
that
wax.
no, 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 you're absolutely right. And it's so intriguing because often enough people are stuck in the 12 steps. When I say stuck, that's a
Mhm.
negative word. That this is the system that they truly believe in, and they maybe are struggling to move forward. Yet when we actually look at step 4 to do inventories of those habits that we are having, the beliefs that we are having, these multiple lists that are so powerful and so beautiful if done correctly. They can be huge starting points, they can be huge work, but often enough, that is some of the more difficult work I've found to actually be honest to yourself and say,
Mhm.
okay, this is your pissed off list. Jim, he has done that to me. That's how it made me feel. Oh, I hate Jim, and that's why I drink. Okay. Then you take that same list a little bit later, and you've got Jim and John and Jack there, all the things that they have done to me. And then you add another column, and you actually say, okay, Jim has done that to me. That's how it made me feel. My contribution was I actually pissed Jim off.
Mm.
So it's that suddenly taking ownership, becoming intelligent when it comes to our own emotions If you're
Absolutely.
in an inpatient program, and I had the pleasure of doing 10 o'clock in the mornings, feelings, the feeling session.
Mm.
And that was one of the most
Mhm.
brutal sessions. No sunglasses, no hat, no nothing, nothing in your hands, and you have to sit together in a circle, and initially no one says a bloody word. And finally, someone pipes up and says, "Ah, I hated that you ate all the chocolate cookies last night." And then suddenly there's fear, there's anger, there's joy, there's all these kind of emotions are coming up, and you can't hide. There's nothing to do. There's this. You just have to face your own emotions. And it's those
Mhm.
kind of settings where we are exposed. So these are all benefits. These are all huge advantages of actually going through a system as such. But then it needs to lead on. And we need to find ways how to serve ourselves, how to love ourselves. And you were pointing towards
Mhm.
the 12th step, which is
Mhm.
giving back, which is service. And I could rephrase
Mhm.
that in your case. You found a purpose in your life, in that you get a huge amount of fulfillment by you being that person who can be there for others. So
Mhm.
you're actually seeing that little boy, the Lone Ranger, in others, and you can say, "Hey, I love you, man. We're gonna get you
Mhm.
sorted." So
Yeah.
there, that is a most beautiful, beautiful closing of the circle once you come to step 12. So I found that there is so much benefit in the 12 steps. But if you only do 12 steps, I think that it is you're holding yourself back. There needs to be more work. And you were touched
Mm.
by Jesus Christ. I was not. I'm still lagging this conviction. And so therefore luckily other things have touched me, and I'm able to use a an energy force from another source, and that is suiting me very
Mhm.
well. So I think bottom line is you need to grow, and you have done so much emotion and intelligence work after um, well over the last recent years, and this was
Mhm.
really way beyond your 12 steps, was it not?
Absolutely. And that's like let's see, it was 2016 when my wife left, and then the tumultuous relationships with the love addicts,
Hmm.
or the love avoidance, and me searching and searching and searching and getting brokenhearted again and again and
Hmm.
again,
Yeah.
and becoming suicidal after every time. Backtrack, way backtrack. After Doris died, there was nothing that I wanted more than to follow her.
Hmm.
And I didn't, thank God.
Hmm.
But I knew back then if I drank and drugged at that time,
Hmm.
I would have very definitely called out to death and invited him in the door and had a drink with him and left with him that night. Um, and fast forward back to when so I'm 58 years old, so that was 2 years ago when I started learning about all the trauma and I started doing the inner child work, and then I could, with hindsight, I could look back
Hmm.
and say, that's why I got into drugs and alcohol, because that little boy never got what he needed. That little boy ended up on the streets when he was 15, living in a 1976 Pontiac Granville.
Hmm.
Um, and to your point, Stefan, the 12 steps and the program on Alcoholics Anonymous never got that deep
My point.
for me.
My point.
For me, a lot of people have, but to learn after almost 2 decades of sobriety, however, I would have been 20, 21 years sober,
Yeah.
to learn that the root cause was the childhood trauma.
Exactly.
And that is just hugely,
Hmm.
I mean, that's paramount. That's
Yeah.
that's what caused it all.
Hmm.
And if no one, men in particular, if men will not have the courage, have the balls to stand in that fire and burn, then you've got the guys like you were talking about, the guys
Mm,
with 40, 50 years sobriety. I'm
mm,
fine.
mm.
Are you really?
Exactly.
Are you really? Right.
Oh, I love to hear your words there because I absolutely 100% agree. It is, and I want to have however, I also want to send a brotherly hug to those men out there who have not yet taken that step. Often enough, we go through childhoods. When we look back with informed eyes, you think, oh my God, I would not wish that onto anyone else. And maybe that should be the key question if you cross examine your own past. Would you wish your childhood on anyone else? Maybe someone, maybe your own children, someone you truly love. Would you wish them to have the same experiences? And that is probably the best way of thinking about it. Because when we are living in a burning house, then for us that's normal. We warm our fingers on the burning wall, and I think that
Mhm.
is we dissociate. We For a long, long time, I thought, no, there was actually nothing wrong with my childhood. It was look at me, look who I have become. There can't have been anything wrong with my childhood, and so here we are. So I think that there is so much worthwhile to be explored when it comes to our
Mhm.
early years and some of the core beliefs that are laid down at that
Mhm.
time, we need to question. And for that, we need to be aware what are these
Mhm.
core beliefs. And if you don't go through trauma, or
Mhm.
if you go through trauma and then try to escape and not just throw yourself into work or throw yourself into alcohol or throw yourself into whatever, then you are not giving yourself the chance to actually stand still for a moment and explore what might have been the root cause in this case of whatever has occurred.
Mhm.
And to whatever has occurred now, there might not be a root cause. Let's say you have been
Mhm.
successful in your company, but another company is bankrupt, and you're suddenly on the
Mhm.
street. That's not your fault. That's not their fault. That's just economic downturn. But
Mhm.
how are you responding to that? Do you feel betrayed because maybe in your childhood you were neglected and
Mhm.
felt betrayed? Are you now therefore showing the same anger that maybe in the past was present, and like looking at you with the red veil of the berserker coming down? This was the old you. That old you can come
Absolutely.
out and again and could
Yeah.
lead you maybe in a direction that you don't want to go. It's very
Absolutely.
unlikely. It's unlikely that will happen because you've done the work. You've done that extra work, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And what you said earlier resonated with me about what I wish my life on anyone else.
Hmm.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone else, but I am so incredibly grateful for my story. And
Yeah.
I read a phenomenal book.
Hmm.
I read a book once, and it starts with the Archangel Gabriel in the Hall of Souls. And the Archangel Gabriel says, I have this life and I have this life. And he calls out, and this life's going to be a shit life. This life's going to be a great life. Who wants this life? And I feel this may chaff some of my Christian friends, but I feel we have the choice, that we always have the choice, that in that hall of souls that we get to choose. We know the life we're going to live. I chose to live this life where I lost the love of my life, where she died in my arms. I chose that. I chose the childhood of the neglect and the abandonment and the physical violence. I chose I chose the life of marrying a beautiful woman who's going to leave me 11 years down the road with three beautiful daughters, but I chose that betrayal. I chose all of these lives because it was my turn to lose. It was my turn to learn those lessons.
I'm laughing so much here because I actually agree with you. But what you're talking is you're talking without maybe knowing it. You're talking about past life regression, and
Mhm.
that we have got the opportunity as as beings to live multiple lives, and each life is there to teach you a lesson or lessons. And some lives are truly not nice. Some lives are there to teach you suffering, teach you resilience, teach you survival, both in the wrong and the right way. And
Mhm.
then there is this thought that now that your soul has learned something, that then you
Mhm.
can go to the next level, like in a kind of a video game, where you have beaten that big bloody monster on that level, and and now you're in the next level and have to learn more lessons. And I think this is actually
If you,
a very
Mhm.
interesting way of looking at things. I did not see you as a believer in God talk about such a topic. That
well,
you surprised me. You're a man of many surprises.
I think we get the choice too. I think you and I agree that we choose to learn lessons. We get to
Mm,
learn lessons, and then at the end of this existence, I feel that we get to choose again. Do we go back to the Hall of Souls, or do we go somewhere else?
mm.
And that somewhere else is God knows, but He's not telling, right? Um,
True.
and I've had multiple friends tell me that, well, my whole life people have said I'm an old soul. And I take that to mean that I've been here before. Um, and a very dear, right? A very dear friend of mine, when I was telling her about how my wife left and just walked out and abandoned and betrayed me, and re-wounded that inner child all over again, she said, "Well, Polly, it sounds like your ex-wife is a very young soul. She's choosing to learn about." Um, and, and I'm like, "Huh, okay, that makes sense." And this woman and gosh, throughout my life, half a dozen more have told me that in these past lives, they see a warrior. Um, I've had a masseuse actually tell me that when she would rub me, my tattoos would talk to her, and that at the end of every rub, I call them rubs, at the end of every massage, she would say, "Do you want to see? Do you want me to tell you what I saw this time?" Um, and she 2 or 3 times has told me that she's seen me in battle. She's seen me with swords and daggers, and another very dear friend told me the exact same thing. She's like, we were in battle together, and I'm like, were we both men or both women? She's like, I don't know, but we were kicking ass and taking names. But I guess
Interest.
back to my point
Mm,
is that I think we get these choices. I think God gives us these choices, and God
mm,
is all inclusive and He's not exclusive. So just like the halls of AA, we're all inclusive and not exclusive. So Saddam Hussein is given a choice. Hitler is
mm,
given a choice.
mm.
And and just run the list. These
Yeah.
people they choose the lives. I feel that deeply. And this life, I have learned so fucking much, it's not funny.
Very true. Very, very, very true.
I'll come
Wow.
back again.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. Paul, I knew this would be an amazing interview. I didn't think that we would explore, having lived very different lives. We have had very similar insights. We had to learn very similar
Mhm.
lessons. And therefore, by us
Mhm.
being humble and authentic and honest now, speaking about things that other men would probably say, what the heck, they are two loonies here. Hopefully, we have been able to show that we are actually not loonies, that this is work that is so worthwhile to be done, to explore your emotions, to explore your core beliefs, to explore those things that are deep inside that are driving you, that were running those deep currents that were below the surface, but that were dragging you in one direction or the other in your life. And by you actually putting a big searchlight onto these kind of emotions, these kind of core beliefs, you can then ask the right questions. Is that core belief true? What is it really telling me? When did I pick that belief up? And is it still serving me? These things served
Mhm.
you at one moment in time, but unfortunately we hang on to them like a bad
Mhm.
smell on some cloves, and it just keeps penetrating our lives. And that's where we have got the opportunity to question that nowadays. And
Mhm.
true leaders, true men, real men, are not shying away from that. Real men are stopping and are looking at their anger, are looking at their sadness, are accepting
Mhm.
those emotions for what they are, waves of neurochemicals. So it
Mhm.
is your choice how to respond to those emotions, what to make with them. And I think it is not just a negative thing, like it's your duty to do that. Yes, it is your duty, but it's also your privilege. It's your privilege to
Mhm.
explore who you really are deep down, and then use the best of those driving forces, harness them, and become that version of yourself you deserve to be, you always wanted to be, you needed to be, in the long run. You needed to be one version as a younger man. Uh, Now you need to be someone else. You need to be that new version that makes this world a better
Mhm.
place. But you need to start with yourself. And you have done that, Paul.
Exactly. The uh, the only way out is through. I mean, these are all cliches that
Mm.
smarter people, um, for men in particular to go into that cave and slay that dragon, um, and to know to make those choices, to go into the cave and know that the only way out is through, and you have to kill that dragon. You have to, um, and then come out of the darkness and shine,
Mm.
and to know that you are capable of great violence and choose not to. Um,
Oh, nice.
that that is a man, in my opinion.
Nice.
And I'm not
Nice.
100% there. I can lose my shit at the drop of at some of the most inappropriate times.
Yeah.
But that's what this world needs. All this demasculization or whatever it is with
Mm.
the toxic masculinity, that's bullshit. um Men are men for a reason. A man better be dangerous. He
Mm.
better be capable of violence because he has a family to protect,
I love the
right?
100% agreed. Better a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. There's so much to
Hmm.
be, so much truth in that. And gives me goosebumps, because I know the warrior in me. He has run my life for a very long time. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm now, however, because he was protecting me. He was protecting me, the inner child. He was he was a good dude. Having said that,
Hmm.
he has a very sharp sword, and that sword has two edges. So his behavior has also hurt me. So it is nowadays. I I want to be the source of strength, but I also want to be the source of love and the source of understanding and the source of
Hmm.
safety, security, etc. But you have to be strong. Strong for yourself to start off with. And for that, you need to know what's going on. For that, you actually have to learn how to love yourself. Radical self-compassion. I think that is such an important bit, isn't it? That you get to know. And it's again, that's level 4, or step 4, shall I say. That is your inventory. You need to know everything in you, warts and all. Not just the good things, not just the things that you can bend a little bit so that they look good. No, warts and all. Know the negativity, know your shortcomings, and then use your time wisely to keep those shortcomings in check, or even work on them to maybe turn them into strengths. Question their validity, question where they come from. And maybe there's a very simple answer where they came from, and then you can say, okay, fine. Now I finally know why I'm like that, and now I can put that baby to bed. But there's so much. Paul, you're an amazing man. This was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for being open, humble, authentic, not bullshitting in some cliches, but actually saying, yeah, that was my life. And there are many things I'm not proud of, but here it is, so that others can learn. And I think these are the meaningful conversations that are missing nowadays in many lives. And so I'm very, very, very grateful that you allowed me an insight into you, that you allowed me to question you, to bounce ideas around. That's how we men can become better humans. That is how we can lead by example. And I think that is wonderful. So thank you. Thank you for the privilege of this interview.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stefan. Steel sharpens steel, my friend.
True, true, true. And you guys out there, look after yourself, live with passion, and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.